So today's reading follows on from last week. We were looking at the Sermon on the Plain, and last week in Luke's Gospel, Jesus' Beatitudes. So a group of 4 sayings: happy or blessed are you if you're poor, hungry, sad and hated, as Jesus was saying to his disciples at that point, for the gospel's sake. Happy are you in all those different situations if your desire is to serve God and you are in those states, because then you've thrown away all that artifice, you've thrown away all that sort of shell around you of tradition and expectation, and you're living a kingdom life. So this is the second part of that address, Luke chapter 6 and verses 27 to 38. But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who ill-treat you. If anyone hits you on one cheek, let him hit you on the other too. If someone takes your coat, let him have your skirt as well. Give to everyone who asks you for something, and when someone takes what is yours, do not ask for it back. Do for others just what you want them to do for you. If you love only the people who love you, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners do that. And if you lend only to those whom you hope to get it back, why should you receive a blessing? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. No, love your enemies and do good to them. Lend and expect nothing back, and you will have a great reward, and you will be sons of the Most High God, for he is good to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge others, and God will not judge you. And do not condemn others, and God will not condemn you. Forgive others, and God will forgive you. Give to others, and God will give to you. Indeed, you will receive a full measure, a generous helping poured into your hands, all that you can hold. The measure you use for others is the one that God will use for you. There's a lot of repetition of numbers in this kind of idea. We had 4 blessings in the Beatitudes, 4 warnings, and then we also have 4 things at the beginning of this. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who will ill-treat you. And then we've got those 4 opposites, if anyone hits you on the cheek, let him have the other one. If anyone takes your coat, give him a shirt. If anyone asks you for something, then something takes back. Do for others just as you want them to do for you. The golden rule sums up that section. So it's teaching which uses a lot of words, surprise, to illustrate around a wider point. When Jesus said to Nicodemus, nobody can enter the kingdom of heaven unless he is born again, Nicodemus was justifiably and rightly, I suppose, and understandably, very confused. How can you be born a second time? And of course, Jesus wasn't literally saying you've got to be born a second time, and yet he was. Because to be in a relationship with God where you understand that God loves you, that you are a special child of God, that you are loved and accepted by the God who made all things, is to be a new creation. It literally is. Just as much as in the beginning of John's Gospel, John describes the birth of Jesus as the most significant event, even more significant than the original creation of all things, because the Word existed before even that. So when Jesus says to the disciples in last week's, happy are you when you're poor, he's not saying it's great to be poor, but he is saying it's great to be in a situation when you are stripped away of all that self-sufficiency, because at that moment, at your lowest point, when you suffer, that's when you'll probably have just about enough energy to realize that God stands there at the door and knocks. The clamour of your life will have gone down. The amount of things you can be preoccupied with will limit, and you will be able to see with some clarity the thing that you've always tried to ignore. The knocking at the door, the voice in your head, the love that you feel, the glory of creation. Instead, you've been preoccupied with everything else that the world thinks of as important. Being rich, being well fed, always being happy, always being praised by other people. These are the things which are the direct, they feed the soul, and in the case of food, the body, but they don't provide eternal feeding. They are the things that simply keep one alive and make one happy in the moment. But they're not fundamental things. They're not foundational things. They're just transient things, you know? So if you are, as Jesus says, if you are very rich, or if you're very full, or if you laugh continually at everything and everything's great, you know, and everyone praises you, well, poor you, because all you've got is the moment. And that moment will end. There will be a cessation of that sort of stuff, and you'll be alone, bereft, and still no foundation in the storms of life. So Jesus says you've got to be in that state in order to be able to sense God being there for you. And Jesus says the attitude you need to have towards other people, summed up in the Golden Rule, but fleshed out in these 4 positives and then the 4 negatives too, is that one must have a sense at which everybody is valuable, everybody is loved, everyone is equal. That's what it means when it says love your enemies. If someone hits you on a cheek, offer them the other. If someone is angry, if someone is upset, if someone does evil things to you, they are in a state of sin. They are consumed by anger and whatever else it is that they're consumed by. What are you going to do? Are you going to join in with that negativity? Are you going to also succumb to anger and antipathy and violence and selfishness and greed? Are you going to do that? Because that's your decision. You can't control how the other person behaves and how the other person is. But what are you going to do? And Jesus goes further with this idea of love for enemies, which is acceptance and, and just slough it off with love. If someone says evil things about you or someone says horrible things about you, that's their reaction. You keep on doing what's right, because that's what the call was in the reading from last week. Our calling is to do the right thing, to do what is good, to do what is creative, to do what builds people up, to do what affirms people. So all of these things, they sound very challenging if you take them at face value, like Nicodemus did with his saying from Jesus. But they are all, if you like, orbiting around the central point, which is that everybody matters, everyone's important. And if you have a sense of God in your heart, then your attitude towards people has to be born out of that love and not how you react in the moment, like normal people do, like everyday people do, to be annoyed, judgmental, prejudiced, quick to anger. All of these things are not the attitudes of the kingdom. Don't judge others and God will not judge you. Don't condemn others and God won't condemn you. Forgive others and God will forgive you. This is how your life is lived out by your moral priorities. And your moral priorities are based on universal love, because you know yourself to be loved by the God who made all things. Give to others, and God will give to you. Indeed, you will receive a full measure, a generous helping poured into your hands, all that you can hold. Because joy and an understanding that you're loved by God is the richest treasure, the one that we hear so much about in the Gospels, that people sought to find the lost sheep, the lost coin, the treasure buried in a field. All of those things tell us about how important it is to find that thing, because to come home to God, to be aware that God loves you, is the greatest thing.